Hi, welcome. On behalf of the Indiana Arts Commission, I'd like to welcome you to the FY24 Arts Organization Support Program for new applicants, presented by our regional arts partners. I'm Ann McKim, Executive Director of the Arts Council of Southwestern Indiana, down here in Evansville, and Chair of the Regional Arts Partnership, which my colleague Kayla Myers will share more information on shortly. The Arts Organization Support Program has been utilized by the IAC to disperse funds throughout the state for nearly 50 years. In 2022, the Commission engaged a consulting team to evaluate the program with a focus on identifying issues of funding inequity. Hundreds of stakeholders across all regions of the state participated in this work, and the resulting recommendations have led to changes that we believe will truly enable the IAC to fulfill the mission of the arts everywhere, every day, for everyone in Indiana. More information on these results are available in the IAC's recorded presentation for everyone in Indiana living our vision, and that will be linked in the chat. But there are a few items that I'd like to highlight on the differences of the program this year. First, all AOS grants will be funded in 2-year cycles moving forward. Successful FY24 applicants will not need to reapply for funding until FY26. In the past, all organizations of all budget sizes earning over a certain score were funded, meaning that roughly 99% of the applicants were awarded. Organizations are now divided into 5 tiers instead of 3 based on budget size, and those with the largest budgets will experience increased competition in the program. And this is competitive to the criteria, not competitive with one another. And finally, the paneling process will be slightly different this year and will include merging of some of our regions for paneling and additional training for panelists. And with that, I invite Kayla Myers, our partner for Region 2, to get us started.
Thanks, Anne. So for some general housekeeping announcements, we are recording today's webinar, which will be emailed to you in the next few days. We all ask that all participants please mute themselves throughout the presentation, and questions can be typed into the chat. We will link a PDF of the grant application in the chat if you'd like to follow along later in the presentation. We will also allow a few minutes for questions at the end. If you need accommodations for the grant guidelines or the online application, please contact the IAC's Accessibility Coordinator, Stephanie Haynes, as shown on the screen. Live captioning is being offered during this webinar. You can turn on your captions in the toolbar at the bottom of the screen. And if you need help with the captions or any accessibility during this webinar, please send a private chat to Connie Brom. So based on the population, the IAC has divided our state into 11 different regions. These workshops were previously held at the regional level, but the pandemic provided an opportunity to work together more in recent years. At the end of the presentation, we'll provide contact information for all of the regional partners so you can identify yours if you are not familiar. As Anne noted, I'm the partner for Region 2, and additional partners joining me today are Brady Eulis from Region 5, Ryan Shelton from Region 7, and Ann McKim from Region 10. And then Deanna Polson will also be presenting the IAC's online grant system. So for today's agenda, we will be covering information about the Arts Organization Support Grant Program. Specifically, we'll cover the program summary and timeline, the evaluation process, application information and evaluation criteria. Then we'll also view the online grant system and go through some grant writing tips, and we'll finish up with grant recognition and advocacy information and allow some time for questions at the end. So Arts Organization Support, or AOS Grants, provide annual operating support for the ongoing artistic and administrative functions of eligible arts organizations during the grant period. And please note, this program will only be open every other year. So applicants do not request an amount for this program. The grant amount is based on available funds, the number of eligible applicants, the application score, the organization's budget size based upon the total cash income figure for the most recently completed fiscal year profit and loss statement, equity funding priorities, and then the IAC's award size policy. So the award cannot exceed 20% of the applicant's cash income figure. So for eligibility, new applicants and applicants with a budget of less than $50,000 should take the comprehensive eligibility quiz prior to applying. If you are new to the AOS program, you will definitely want to take the quiz. If you're a current AOS recipient and have any questions about eligibility or your organization's annual cash revenue being above the $20,000 threshold for your most recently completed fiscal year, please reach out to your regional arts partner. The eligibility quiz includes 9 questions, and you must certify that your organization can say yes to all of the questions. It does not, however, guarantee eligibility, so we strongly encourage new applicants to reach out to their regional arts partners to discuss this. We don't want an organization to find out they are ineligible and potentially miss out on applying for the Arts Project Support Program instead. Please note that applicants can only apply to one program. So to be eligible, applicants must meet all eligibility requirements, but in short, your organization must be a 501c3 arts organization with exempt status for at least 3 years by the application deadline of March 9th. Operate in and serve Indiana year-round, and year-round means the organization regularly offers publicly accessible activities throughout the year, and have a cash budget income of at least $20,000 for the most recently completed fiscal year profit and loss statement. So if you're not sure what we're looking for, or if you would like confirmation your organization meets this requirement, please send your profit and loss statement to your regional arts partner for their review. And our goal is to know for sure that your organization is eligible before you spend time completing the application. So then for the program timeline, applicants that are funded in this program will be funded again for 2 years. So this is fiscal years 2024 and 2025, or July 1st, 23 through June 30th of 25. The deadline to request a draft application review, which is for first-time applicants and organizations not currently receiving IAC funding, is February 23rd. The application is due March 9th at 11:59 p.m. We, of course, suggest you submit a few days early in case you have final questions. Public panel reviews will take place between April 20th and May 4th of 23, and your organization will be notified prior to panels with your specific panel date and time. And then award notification will take place June 12th through the IAC's online system. If your organization is funded, grant agreements are processed between July and September. The first payment, which is 75% of the award, will go out October of 23. And then the year 1 grant report is due July 13th of 24. And the final 25% of your year 1 award is typically deposited between August and September of 24 after your year 1 report is submitted and reviewed. So if you are awarded funding, we just want to highlight a few requirements that your organization will need to follow with the funds being awarded through the state. So payments must be made by direct deposit. Your organization must obtain a unique entity identifier, or UEI, which was previously known as a DUNS number, prior to payment. You must follow the ADA and federal civil rights requirements, monitor record retention and tax responsibilities, and ensure grant funds are used for eligible expenses only. And the full requirements are outlined in the guidelines and grant agreements. So then moving on to the evaluation process, panelists will only be evaluating the narrative sections of your application, which will consist of the following: organizational excellence, which is worth 25 points. IDEA, or inclusion, diversity, equity, and access, for 30 points, artistic quality for 15 points, and then community engagement for 30 points. And the above criteria have sub-bullet points within the application narrative section, so they will be readily available as you're working on the application for review. So this slide shows a sample of this year's rubric specifically for the organizational excellence criteria that grant panelists will use to evaluate your application. You have access to the evaluation criteria and the full rubric to see how panelists will be evaluating applications for all of the criteria. These will be available for download in the Before You Begin section of the application, as well as the IAC's website. And I'm now going to turn it over to Brady Eulis from Region 5 to start to walk you through the application.
Thanks, Kayla. As she said, I'm Brady Eulis. I am the Region 5 Arts Partner through the Community Foundation of Randolph County, and I'm here today to walk you through the next few sections of the Arts Organization Support Grant application. So let's move to section 2. This is simply a series of yes or no short answer questions for your organization to complete relative to your 501c3 status, grant history, volunteer or staff run, not-for-profit, percent of your program's activities focused on arts education. This is also the section where you will upload your income and expense statement to validate you meet the cash revenue requirements. Please do not upload and audit just your profit and loss information for your organization's most recently completed fiscal year. Make sure it's for the entire year. Please note that section 2 information submitted here will only be reviewed by IAC administrators. It is not part of the panel reviews. Section 3 of AOS application is certifying accessibility. As a public funder, accessibility is important all of the time, and the IAC needs to validate that all funded organizations meet all ADA and Section 504 accessibility requirements. There are a few key steps in this area. Number 1, certifying the organization is accessible or able to make accommodations upon request. 2, a narrative box to share how a participant or attendee would request an accommodation from your organization if necessary. And 3, you share how the organization reviewed the accessibility of its programs and facilities. The IAC provides a link in the application to a simple self-assessment checklist that helps guide you through your assessment if you need it. It's very handy. I would encourage you to use it. It's a great tool in general to help guide your organization on how to improve accessibility over time. Your answer here will lead you to the final details requested, and know that accessibility documentation in the form of the self-assessment, if that's helpful, should be retained and available for review for a period of 3 years. If you have questions about accessibility, again, please reach out to your regional arts partner. This section also is only reviewed by IAC administrators, not panelists. The IAC Accessibility Coordinator, Stephanie Haynes, is also a great resource if you do have questions your rep can't answer. The next section is section 4, Organizational Excellence. This is the narrative section or the heart of your application. This is the area where your organization will be assessed on the 4 key areas that Kayla covered earlier. It's the only section of the grant application that panelists reviewing your application will see and score. You'll start this section by entering basic organizational information for panelist reference. The first scored area is organizational excellence, 25% weight of your total score. I'll cover what that means, then hand things back over to Anne, who will continue to review the other areas. What do we mean by organizational excellence? That's evaluated relative to the size of the organization. Panelists are assessing the extent to which the applicant understands its mission, demonstrates its value and purpose, and that it has the capacity to carry out its programs and services. Your answers here should provide a clear understanding of what your organization does, that it is mission-driven. It should demonstrate your organization's importance, the purpose, the need it's addressing, and its impact. It's great to think of narrative examples that you could include. You'll also demonstrate your organization has the capacity to carry out this work. The capacity of an organization refers to its ability to perform well or the enabling factors that allow it to perform its functions and achieve its goals. Panelists will consider whether your mission reflects the purpose of your organization. This means that you want to make sure you're describing operations that align with your organization's mission. Remember, these panelists are only going to know and score what is written in your application. So writing for clarity and comprehension is important. Final note here, there are character limits in these sections. They're not unlimited, so try to be concise and direct in your answers to ensure an accurate picture of your organization. Know that your regional arts partners are here to help again and provide direction and guidance, or just lend an ear and listen. Please feel free to reach out. Sometimes it's easier to talk through responses to these questions than to write them if you're working with a small organization and don't have a larger team to help you. Now I'll turn the discussion back over to Rap and McKim from Region 10 to review the idea end of things. Idea, again, with the IAC always refers to inclusion, diversity, equity, and access. Anne?
So this section of the application will be worth 30 points. I encourage all applicants, even those who feel confident in their awareness and understanding of idea principles and practices, to spend time reviewing the definitions and information provided with the application materials, including the IAC webpage focused on this topic. I mentioned at the beginning of the webinar, the Commission is committed to inclusion, diversity, equity, and access in the arts. And this is an area of the application that you'll want to take your time on. That being said, we understand that this work can be hard and requires constant reevaluation, and it's never actually complete. So how do you demonstrate excellence in this area? You explain your journey and you show that you understand your audience. And of course, those are the two narrative prompts for this section. Successful applicants will reference organizational documents like strategic plans that include idea goals. We'll be able to discuss the evolution of specific initiatives like programs developed in collaboration with underserved or diverse partners. And we'll be able to explain evaluation criteria measuring impact. In other words, you'll demonstrate that your idea work is not just checking a box, but rather it's central to the daily and the long-term efforts, vision, and resource allocation priorities of your organization. The next area of the grant application is artistic quality. The artistic quality narrative section is an opportunity for all of you to shine. You know you're doing amazing things in the arts, and you have 5,000 characters here to share that story with the review panelists. Successful applicants will have read the narrative prompt carefully and address each item fully. You'll provide information on your arts education programming, as well as on your general programming. And you'll be able to explain the experience and expertise of the individuals who are leading these offerings. As with the idea section, you're asked how you evaluate and continuously improve the quality of your arts and educational activities. This section is worth 15 points of the evaluation. The next section is another big one. It's community engagement, and it's worth 30 points. The community engagement section, like the idea section, asks applicants to demonstrate to the review panelists that the programs and organizational offerings are developed and implemented with active participation from the communities you serve. Again, we encourage you to review the resources linked in the application, which here include a document explaining the community engagement ladder, and a 15-minute video on defining community engagement for organizations. And I keep referencing that you should reference the materials in the application. When you're reading through it, you're going to see these links very clearly, but always if you have questions about them or have trouble accessing them, you can reach out to your reps. The IAC defines community engagement as working with a community so that you know what they want, not working for a community where you assume you know what they want. It is an active, two-way, long-term relationship in which one party motivates the other to take action or get involved. and both parties experience positive change. The community engagement and idea sections of the application are closely related in this regard, since most, if not all, of your idea goals should be coming from your engagement with the community and the feedback you receive from the conversations with underserved communities. So I like to illustrate community engagement with an example from my own organization, just because it's easier to talk about my organization. Never get an executive director talking about their organization; they'll never stop. But a year ago, we stepped back and asked the question, who are we not serving? Who doesn't feel welcome into our space and why? And one of the answers, among many, was families with young children. Many people seem to have the impression that an art gallery isn't an appropriate space for kids. So recognizing that our area of expertise is not in young children, we reached out to a local organization called Building Blocks, which serves as the regional childcare resource and referral agency for 28 counties in our part of the state. We initially asked members of their team to simply walk through our facility and give us ideas about becoming more child-friendly and welcoming. But that conversation led to more conversations and meetings and much bigger ideas. With Building Blocks as a 50% collaborator, the Arts Council developed Early Childhood Creative Exploration Days, a program that occurred in 4 sessions over the summer. We were in charge of transforming the gallery into a wonderland of art supplies and manipulables and instruments and other items for child-led play. And Building Blocks created standards based on these standards-based materials to help educate caregivers on the educational and developmental benefits of the activities. Pieces in our exhibits were dropped by several feet so that they could be seen at eye level. Each event was promoted through both of our organizations in order to reach both of our audiences. And the best part was that participating families began to attend other Arts Council programming in the gallery because Creative Exploration Days provided the access point that was needed. If I were discussing this in the community engagement section, I would also include information on how all of the Arts Council planning documents were organized in such a way that Building Blocks is able to hand the fully packaged program to other partners in other communities, and how data was collected via participant feedback, and that there are plans for continuation of the program. This narrative section allows for 7,000 characters, so you'll have plenty of room to be thorough and detailed in your responses. And that concludes the narrative section of the grant application. Now I'd like to introduce Deanna Polsma, who will review the online grant system and take a look at the actual application.
Awesome, thanks, Anne. As she mentioned, my name is Deanna Polsma. I've put my contact information in the chat for anyone who may need it. I am here as your point of reference for all things related to the online system and technical issues you may run into. I'm going to actually share my screen here. 1 second. So this is the landing page when you get ready to log into the online system. I know most of you all are going to be first-time applicants for AOS, but in the event that you have ever applied for arts project support or another grant with the IAC, you will already have an existing account. If you're not sure what your login information is, feel free to reach out to myself or even right here on this page. Suzette's email is here. We can help get you access into your account. If you're like, the organization has an account, but I wasn't here, we've had staff change, don't know what email is associated with it, we can get that updated. But if you do know what email is associated with the account and you just don't remember the password, there is a handy dandy forgot your password link you can click right here. If you're brand new and you've never applied to any of the grant programs, you're going to start by creating a new account. There are some very important things that you're going to want to have on hand before you launch into creating the account. So you're going to want your organization's EIN number, mailing address, the UEI number, what region you're in, your state, congressional and Senate districts, things of that nature, primary organization discipline, just those are kind of the basics that you want to make sure you have handy for completing because they are required fields. So if you don't have it, it won't let you move on. Once you have successfully either created your account or logged into your account, it'll take you straight to the dashboard. This dashboard has two tabs, active and historical. So if you've applied to grants in the past, they're going to show up under historical tabs. The active is going to be anything that's still currently open. So if you've received a grant, still have a pending final grant report to submit, or if you started working on an application but haven't submitted it, it's going to show here in this active request tab. You do also want to make sure this information here at the top of the screen on your dashboard is correct. It's the mailing address, phone number, email, all that fun stuff, because this is the information that's used to generate the grant contracts if you're awarded a grant. So please take the time to make sure that this is up to date. If it's not, you'll simply click this little pencil icon and you can edit the information directly yourself. To begin an application, you'll click the apply button up in the gray bar. And this will show you all of the open applications with the Indiana Arts Commission. And so we're going to click in here to the Arts Organization Support in the blue apply link. You want to make sure it's the link at the top, not the bottom. And this will take you right into the online system. If you wanted to, you have the option of clicking, it says question list. This will generate a PDF of the application that you can download, save, print out, do what you wish. If you just, have a better eye for kind of reading and responding versus on the computer, you can do it on paper if you'd like. The system also automatically saves. So let's say you're scrolling down and you type a couple letters. You'll notice if I click out, it turned green. The system just automatically saved that entry. So as you're going, you can just keep working. You don't have to make sure that you go down and hit save every moment. But if you're like, I don't trust technology, I like to make sure that things are saved, you can scroll all the way down to the bottom and there is a save application button you can click before exiting your application, because you don't have to do it all at once. You can come in and out and work on it as you need to. You also have the option, if you're like, this is too much to read all at once, these little gray bars, you can click them and it will minimize all of the sections for you. So that way you're just looking at whatever section you want to be in. You don't have to have them all open at once. When you're going through the application, you'll notice some colors. So the green is going to be a note or an example related to the question being asked. So it's trying to call your attention, make sure you're aware of these hints, these tips, or how they want you to respond. Anything that's blue is going to be a link that you can click in the actual application. So this is something to be aware of if you do print the application, download that PDF, the links, you don't have the ability to click them when you're looking at a piece of paper. So something just to keep in mind when you're going through the application. There are questions that require document uploads. You can only upload a single document. So if for some reason you have two documents that you want to put together to create this one to respond to a question, make sure that they're compiled together in a single document. If you upload one file and then try to upload another, it's just going to replace what you previously uploaded. So make sure everything is in a nice little package to upload as a single document into the online system. And again, if you have any questions or have any trouble with that, you can reach out to myself or Suzette and we'll be able to help you. Let's see, if you wanted to go back to your dashboard, you can hit the home icon. And so you can see, because I started entering some information, it's now here in my active requests. So next time I come to log into the system, I don't have to go back and click that gray apply button at the top. I can just come right to my dashboard, look at the grant application I want to work on and hit edit application, and it'll take me right back to where I left off at. A few more things. If you have applied for operating support in the past, there is an option to copy previous answers. So you can copy forward information that you would have submitted in a previous grant application. That being said, this application is very different than years past, so there's not a whole lot of information that will transfer over. But just so that you're aware, that is a function in the system if you ever need to copy previous information, you can. There's also a collaborate button. So if you have your executive director listed on the account and you're like, I spent a lot of time on this. I want to make sure that I didn't miss anything or misrepresent any of the information, and I want them to take a look at it. You can click the collaborate button and it will allow you to either email them just read-only access so they can review it and email you back saying it's good to go. Or you can give them the ability to read and edit, or the ability to read, edit, and submit. So depending on who's in the account in the online system from your organization, you can give them different abilities for reviewing and submitting applications if you would like. Now, if you are just like, I need another set of eyes, I'm the only person in my organization that's on this account, you can also click that collaborate button and type in an email address, and it will send them a link to the application. It's read only, but it does give you the ability for someone else to physically look and review and send you back comments that you can then go in and make edits before submitting. That in mind, let's say you're about a week from the deadline, you're feeling good, you submitted the application. Down here at the bottom, it's the blue submit application button. And then you go home and you're like, oh, darn it, I submitted the wrong financial statements. I submitted last year, not this year, sort of deal. If it is before the application deadline, all you have to do is reach out to your regional arts partner. They have the ability to put it back into the draft mode where you can go in, make any edits you need, and then you will resubmit again. However, if it is after the deadline, no changes can be made. Once it's submitted, it's submitted. So keeping that in mind, we encourage you to definitely work ahead of the deadline. So you have plenty of time if something like that comes up and you're not stuck with not being able to make any changes to your application. Let's see, just check and make sure I've gone over all the little functions that I might have missed. So yeah, that's all I got. That's the online system. If you have any questions or want some more clarification, you can send a note in the chat, or you can send me an email or give me a phone call. Happy to help.
My name is Ryan Shelton, and I'm the Regional Arts Partner for Region 7. I'm going to quickly touch base on some tips for grant writing. Do not hesitate to reach out to your Regional Arts Partner with any question. The earlier questions are sent, the easier it is for RAPs to find solutions. If you are a first-time applicant, we highly recommend a grant review. So get the grant finished, you feel like it's in decent shape and you want us to check it out. It needs to be made by February 23rd. That's the deadline to submit for that. And they'll be responded in the order they received. So get them in quickly. Keep in mind the deadline is March 9th, so it's not a big gap between those. We recommend reading the entire application before starting it. Make sure to tell the full story, providing examples, and assume the panelists that review your grant have no familiarity with your organization. Be concise, but provide enough detail to fully answer the question and address the criteria. Longer does not mean stronger. Do not hesitate to show your passion for your organization and its reach into the community. Keep in mind the character counts in each response box. And finally, be sure to have your application edited and revised by others in your organization, or even better, someone willing to help outside your organization. I'm going to talk real briefly about grant recognition and advocacy. If you are funded, here's some key elements to remember. And again, a lot of this is in the application and you get the information, but it's good to hear it. You'll need to provide funding credit on promotional materials and let your audience know about government support for your cultural experience. For example, at an in-person event, you would say activities are made possible in part by the Indiana Arts Commission, a state agency, and the National Endowment for the Arts, a federal agency. And finally, continue inviting legislators to your events, whether virtual or in person. If you have any questions about providing credit, you can refer to the IAC's website or reach out directly to Connie Brahm, who's IAC's Marketing and Communications Director. And before we move to Q&A, I just want to share our information so you'll know who to reach out to. This information is also available in the AOS guidelines and the IAC website. And I think we're ready for Q&A.
All right. Hi, everyone. So I know that was a lot of information, and now is a great time to ask us questions while we're all still convened. You can ask them out loud by raising your hand and unmuting, or you can put them in the chat and we'll share them with the group from there. And fellow reps, if you help me monitor any hands that go up, just in case I miss someone. Okay, Joyce.
Yes, ready?
Yeah.
I want to go back to ask you about the accessibility situation. One of the things in the discussion when you were doing the re-examination of programs and thinking about changes, a lot of people, or one of the things that was brought up is that sometimes the smaller organizations really, it's not that they don't want to do those things, but they may or may not have the capacity to do those things. And in particular, would it be possible that the Arts Council provide the organizations with some sort of list? Obviously, we really, at least our organization, because we partner a lot of times we're partnering with somebody who's a larger organization and has all those things met. But in a smaller venue, if somebody has a request, we kind of need the resources to say, okay, we'll call so-and-so and get that taken care of for you. You know, we're more than willing to do that and want to do that and want to be open in that way and accommodating. But it would be very helpful if the Arts Commission could provide, like, people who do sign language or different ways that if somebody needs something, we would have a resource to turn to if we were in a position where we didn't have a partner who had those resources. A lot of times our partners have those resources, and that has been very helpful for us. But I just think for the small organizations, if we had contacts that would help us do a better job on to be able to provide things quickly for people, that would be a great advantage.
Yeah, that's a great point, Joyce. Luckily for us, Stephanie Haynes, who is the accessibility coordinator for the Indiana Arts Commission, is on the webinar. So I'm going to turn it over to her to kind of cover some of the questions that you brought up.
Yeah, thanks, Joyce. You bring up some good points, especially about smaller organizations. We know it's not, it's something that it sometimes can feel like a challenge to overcome. Luckily, there are a lot of low price or free accommodations we can make to bring in people with disabilities. And though IAC has within the last year updated the accessibility website, Connie just dropped them in the chat, and I really think that you might find what you're looking for on our website. Check that out, or Joyce, you can call me anytime. We'll talk it through.
Oh, Stephanie, I'm always ready to
I
call.
know.
But is there actually, I mean, I've not seen a list. If there's a list that says, who you should contact, if you want to do something in Braille, who you should contact, who you might contact, providers out there that would provide some of these services, if at some point those are things we need.
Yeah. I'll send you I can email you a link and show you what we have. We have some links. It is buried a little bit in our frequently asked questions, but in our frequently asked questions, there's some links to a directory of ASL interpreters, a Braille transcription service, and temporary ramp suggestions.
Oh, good. All right, Stephanie. I have not come across those before, and I think those would be valuable things to have.
We'll put it in the follow-up email. It's a really good point.
Okay, thank you.
All right, great
I
question.
also,
So-
sorry, Ann, I also want to mention that Stephanie realized, like Joyce, that we do have a lot of questions about accessibility out there. So she has put together a webinar that we will share information out soon that we're hoping to host on February 14th that is specifically all about accessibility. So we have some professionals out there that will come in and to provide that presentation to you guys, so you can go into a little bit more deeply.
Thank you,
Great.
Paige.
All right, so just the questions that we have in the chat right now. There's a question, is a DUNS number needed to submit an application? So the DUNS number is no longer the number that is used by the NEA, which is really the whole reason that we need these numbers. You need an EIN number. And Paige, if I misspeak in any way, jump in and tell me I'm wrong. The EIN number is something that you have to attain through the federal SAM's gov.com website, I think. And there's information on how you'll proceed in obtaining that number if you're awarded your grant. It is something that the regional arts partners have walked through with a lot of applicants this year. So it's another place that regional arts partners can be a resource. And Paige, did you want to add anything to that, or is that?
Yeah, just real quickly, it's the unique entity identifier, UEI. So it's a mouthful.
Sorry.
So it's okay. EIN, it's easy to, there's like the three so similar. But the question was, is it required when you apply? We are not going to disqualify an application if it does not have a unique identifier with the UEI number, right? However, if you're funded, you will need to have that number to receive funding from us. So I would strongly encourage you to go ahead and get it so that you can get the ball rolling. It is not the easiest to navigate, as we've heard from many folks out there. So might as well get that started in hopes that and anticipation that you will be funded. Deanna, did you have something to add?
Yeah, I just wanted to pop in that field, the UEI, is a required field. So if you don't have a number, you're going to have to punch in numbers in order to move through the creating an account.
Okay. For clarity on that, Deanna, are you saying that if an organization does not have a number, that they should just insert numbers into that box? Okay, so everybody gets that. And then let your rep know probably that that's what you've done, but just so that you're able to move through the granting process. All right, next question. How do you submit an application for review by your IAC partner? Email them and request a review is really the easiest way. And we all are anticipating the review process, so it's pretty easy to get our attention. Next question. I noticed on the expense eligibility on the guideline sheet for expenses that there are not expenses that are not allowed under operations include capital equipment greater than 5,000. However, on the allowable expenses, there is nothing about capital equipment purchases. Are we able to spend up to $4,999 on capital expenses if we requested it in the request? So I just want to make sure I understand exactly what the question is, Cameron. So the funds that you are requesting, you're not going to put, like in a normal grant, you might be asked to submit an itemized budget of what you're requesting funds for and what you're doing with them. This application is a little bit different because it's an like an organizational support application. So you're not going to say I need to buy a $4,999 printer. I'm not really sure what the object is. You're going to share your profit and loss statement. You're going to talk about your overall financials, but you're not submitting a grant budget. In terms of how you, and Kayla, jump in if you think I'm explaining this wrong or if you think that I'm misreading the question. But so the expenses, it's almost, the expenses are intended for operations. So the funds that you receive are for your general operations. Am I answering your question? I'm afraid that I'm not doing a great job with it.
I think I know what she's saying. So what Anna's saying is you don't request an amount in the application, period. And that most things are allowable. You notice that capital equipment has a specific threshold, $5,000. We will be asking for you guys at the final report, if you are funded, to tell us what the funds were expended on. So what you use the dollars for. If in that financial information, reporting what you spent the money on, if you purchased capital equipment over $5,000, that is not allowable. So we will contact you and we'll have a discussion on how the funds maybe could be repurposed in some other way. Yes, the threshold is 5,000. In theory, you could request or put down that you spent $4,999 in your budget, and that would be okay.
So glad Paige is on this webinar, making what I'm muddling through so much more clear. I hope that is the answers the question that you were asking. All right, next question. All volunteer. What if we pay a nominal fee via contract, a web admin or treasurer? Are they considered paid staff?
You want me to answer that one? Because that one came up earlier in an email with Ryan to me today. So we're really looking for the operational staffing. So that would be like a part-time paid director or artistic director or administrator, somebody who takes care of like, rent and doing those kind of elements. It would not be contracted staff like a web designer, somebody to do the marketing, piecing together things. It would still be considered an all volunteer organization unless there's an individual that is specifically paid to kind of run the ship, if you will, that maybe the board chair is in charge of something at your organization.
All right, I'm not seeing any more questions in the chat, I think. There is some, for folks who aren't following the chat, there's a little more information being shared on UEI and a little more clarity on how to go about using a fake one if you need to as you're moving through. I'm not sure if that's a question that the volume's not turned up on, or if I'm picking up somebody's background volume.
I have a question. May I ask a question?
Yeah.
Okay, this is just as a follow-up to the question that was just answered. So if we are interested in paying staff, is that something that we could do if awarded funds, that we could actually, because our organization is also currently volunteer, but we do have need and have been struggling sometimes because we don't have a paid staff person to work on this regularly. Is that something that we could do if we wanted, even though we don't currently do that?
Yeah, yes, these funds can be used to pay staff.
Thank you.
Okay, I have a question, and I just wrote in the chat too. Organizations that I work for have contract positions for executive director, artistic director, or conductor, and they're very part-time contract positions. So they're not considered employees. There's no benefits, there's no taxes taken out. They're all contract positions. And the grant used to allow an explanation for that. So when you say you have 0 paid staff, it doesn't mean you don't have any people working on that. They're not exactly volunteers, but they're not paid employees either. And now there's no place to explain that. And it's pretty frustrating at times.
Well, let me make clear about who's reading that and if it, how much it really matters. The reason we ask that is to gauge sort of the organization's size and how the funds are being included with staffing. Like what we would qualify as capacity. There is no relationship as to whether you will be funded or not funded based upon your response to that answer. It is merely to help us understand in the field what sort of capacity smaller organizations have, in part so that as we move forward in helping build the field and strengthen it, particularly smaller organizations, it'll help us identify who maybe we want to group together and say, hey, we have this for you guys. There's no measurement. Panelists won't see it, just IAC. And so it's not critical, that we want to have credible, valid data. That's a thing, but we're not going to go back to every organization and say, are you sure you answered that correctly? Because it's not critical information, if that helps, Patricia.
It helps. And for further clarification, so if we have contract positions that are paid, we should just put them in as paid staff, even though they're not technically staff.
Yeah, in this scenario, I would say yes, because you are paying individuals to do operational type activities. There's a difference between, a contract to do a little bit of marketing, but when it's coming down to, somebody who's really kind of managing fundamental operations of the organization, even though it's under contracted, that's fine. So I would go ahead and say, yes, you have some sort of paid staff. Maya, did you have something to add? You just came on, so I was curious.
So I would just add, Patricia, that there's an opportunity within both the organizational excellence and the artistic quality criteria to talk about how these staff help your organization operate. So whether or not they're a contractor, professional, doesn't matter as far as the panelists are concerned. It's what contribution do they make in the organization's operations and assuring its artistic excellence and the other criteria. So, but yeah, great question.
Thank you. That helps immensely.
All right, any other questions? Oh, Anne, if you'd like to ask.
Thanks, Anne. It was mentioned that there are tiers for the funding, and can someone describe what those tiers are? I didn't really understand that aspect.
Do you want me to handle that one?
Sure.
Okay, I don't want to hog up all the bandwidth, but okay. So after all of the applications are submitted, we're evaluating the budget sizes of the organizations. We know and learn from the public feedback in our review of our arts organization program that smaller organizations, they don't necessarily have the paid staff and capacity of our other organizations or experience to write applications. So part of what we wanted to do is identify tiers for budgets so that we could allocate funding as makes sense out into the field. So for example, if your budget is around 20,000 to save 75,000, that would be in one tier. If your budget is over 1.5 million, that would be another tier. So that helps the IAC determine how we're going to allocate the dollars that we have. We want to make sure that we fund our smaller organizations maybe at a higher rate than our larger organizations because they have access to other funding opportunities. So it's part of the restructuring that the IAC did and made these changes in order to provide more equitable access to these limited dollars that we have throughout the state. So it's just merely putting it in sort of these buckets to help us do just that. Sounds a little abstract, quite honestly. It gets way more complicated. Just know that it's our way of ensuring like a greater more equity in those dollars overall.
That sounds great and much appreciated. So how do you, is there, how would you define, I guess, a small budget? You know, I don't know where we would fit in the tiers. And so I'm just curious what those
Sure.
numbers are.
We are too, Anne. We did a model of what we envisioned this upcoming year is going to look like. And then we worked with people who are super smart at math and data. And so we brought them in to build some sort of tool for us to use. So once we get all that information, it will automatically put organizations based upon and budget sizes into 5 different categories. We know that the smallest category is likely going to be around $20,000 to say $75,000. And then the next category will be just above 75 to say 200 or something. And then it goes up in sort of bands as we continue. It's a formula that, quite honestly, Anne, it is out of my realm of comprehension because it is math world, and that's not the world in which I live and operate. But I do know that it is a tremendous tool that removes bias, it removes human error, and rests solely on the information that we will collect through the application process. And we will just take that data, put it in this little tool, and it'll just make magic and put everybody in these tiers. It is after that that we will have a handle on what those budget tiers look like, but it's likely going to be very consistent to what you will see in the guidelines, which I believe is on one of the last pages before you get to the attachments.
Thank you.
You got it.
Page. All right. Are there any final questions? Oh, Joyce, you have another question? Joyce, feel free to unmute yourself if you have another question.
Sorry, I was just talking and not unmuted. I was wanting Paige to maybe tell us a little bit more about that, not about the tiers. I understand that, but at the beginning, how are each of the tiers going to be treated differently? I mean, there's a certain thing that happens based on what tier you're in. Is that right? Or, and then are we just in competition with the people in our tier? Is that?
Sure. I mean, I just want to be very clear about this. You're not in competition with the folks in your tier level. You're in competition with the evaluation criteria. That is this thing to really fundamentally focus in on. That's for which you are going to be measured by the panelists that are going to be reviewing your application. So that is the most important component. Each tier is treated slightly differently based upon budget size. Mostly, again, to be very clear, it's about ensuring equitable access across the tiers. So we do know the smallest budgets are going to have the highest percentage of applications to be funded. We know that the largest organizations in tier, like the biggest tier, what we call tier E, will have a lower percentage of applications that will be funded. So that way the dollars will be distributed. So it'll be kind of incremental difference from the highest percent funded for the smallest organizations And it will continue to kind of decrease in percentage up going down to the E category, if that makes sense. So most percentage funded, least percentage funded, and then it's just distributed throughout. We don't know what exactly that's going to look like because we don't have the application pool yet. And because we changed some of the policies, there could be some gradational differences from what's in the guidelines. Maya, is that fair, or is that a good summary, or you want to add anything?
Yeah, and I would just say, Joyce, you know, look at the rubric. There is a very detailed rubric that the panelists will utilize to leverage to look at when they are evaluating applications to see how closely the applicant adheres to the criteria. So that's really where you should focus attention, is looking at the rubric, understanding what makes a strong application and what makes maybe a less strong application. And the panelists will be looking at applying that universally, but within budget tiers. So I think that's really an important thing to remember. So take a look at that, read the guidelines carefully, read the application thoroughly, and spend some real quality time with the rubric before you start your application.
Maya, I guess I understand that, but I thought when you were starting out talking about the tiers, there was something about, well, I guess the thing is, because we don't know exactly how much money we're getting, right? But
right.
So I guess that's the thing that's kind of tripping me up. If we're in whatever tier we're in, somehow the amount, I understand the percentage is going to make more people in the lower tier have the opportunity to participate, and I understand and appreciate that. But I'm just a little bit confused what it does to the cutoff time as to how much money we think we might be getting. I mean, how much money you think you might get helps you plan on what you're going to do, you know, what you can do, what your capacity really is. So I guess that's just kind of a fuzzy point for me that I didn't understand when they were first going over those numbers.
Well, just remember, you won't ever, because it's our policy, get more than 20% of your budget
of whatever our budget is.
Yes.
So more than 20. So then we can, yeah, that could be the highest
your
we get.
Yeah,
Yes.
that's your ceiling. And again,
Okay.
this is no different than it is every cycle, because again, we receive funds from the General Assembly. And so for that first year of the 2-year cycle, we can't absolutely guarantee for anyone what they might expect based on their budget tier. So in fact, this is sort of as it has been routinely over the 2-year cycle. So just with again, some slightly different parameters there.
Yes. Okay, thank you. That helps. Thank you.
These are all great questions, and I really appreciate you all asking them and having the conversation as a group so that we can learn from each other. There might be questions we didn't even know we wanted to ask until being in a room like this. It looks like everyone has asked who feels like asking right now. But if you're anything like me, you'll think of 100 questions tonight when you're in the shower or when you're driving to work tomorrow. And again, I just really encourage you all to reach out to your regional arts partners. All of the materials from today will be emailed out to you, so you'll have access, excuse me, to the presentation. And of course, all of the materials that we referenced are on the Indiana Arts Commission's website, which is a fabulous resource for so many things. We just can't celebrate you enough for even being in the room today. Being a first-time applicant is a big deal, and we understand how tricky grant writing can be, and it can be a little bit intimidating. And anything that we can do to remove those barriers and encourage you to apply for this funding, we really hope we're able to do. So, RAPS partners, any last comments, or do you feel like we've just knocked it out of the park today? All right. Well, again, thank you so much for joining us, and we look forward to working with you as you move forward through the process. Bye, everyone.